Hello, everyone. This is Piero San Giorgio speaking. Tonight, I am very happy to have with us Frank Cervi. Frank, hello.
Hello, Piero.
So, out of Canada today, not Las Vegas.
Not Las Vegas. That was
Good.
last week.
So, Frank, you're an author and you also write articles. We were just saying that I heard about you from one of your excellent articles about hypergamy and man-woman relationships. And I've ordered two of your books, which I'm going to read soon. And how about you tell us a little bit about what you write about and what are your books about?
All right, so some of the books to highlight corporate land. I wrote this book pretty much, it's just out of frustration. I've worked in the corporate world. I've worked almost every type of job you can imagine. And to see what's going on, especially with the hashtag #MeToo environment, it forced me to sit down and I want to write an entertaining guide. So it's told from the fictional point of view of a character named Troy McAvoy. And he basically takes you on a tour of corporate land, which is almost like Westworld, where you go into a simulated environment and he takes you through all these scenarios and situations that you're going to encounter all the way from the interview to your last day of work. And the book, without giving too much away, stresses if you're going to be there, have an escape plan. We all have to work jobs. We can't all, become entrepreneurs and stuff like that. And if you can, great. If you can do the two-prong approach where you work a job and have your entrepreneurial pursuit on the side, even better. But it's all about trying to have an escape plan because you don't want to be there for the long haul because there's just too many landmines. So corporate land is all about navigating the layout today, and oh boy, there are landmines everywhere. Uncle Nick, if you want a funny, humorous take on men-women relationships, the economy, he is savage. He gives it to you straight. He gives zero fucks. Burning the Midnight is a sequel to Uncle Nick as well, and that's when he goes back to school. He goes back to the universities and colleges and pretty much hammers out essays, hands them in to all the professors, and just shocks them all with his take on what's going on in society versus what they kind of want you to write in college. They don't want you to think outside the box. They don't want you to be actual critical thinking. So there's 270 pages of that, and it's hilarious. And the one recent one I wrote is The Bro Next Door, and this is kind of different. So what I did, this is probably one of the funner ones I've written, is it's satire on erotica, and it makes fun of dude bro culture at the same time. So it's told through the eyes of your typical American dude bro, and it's memoir style, and pretty much he gets into a bunch of fucked up sexcapades and scenarios, and it's just a laugh riot. So those are just some of the books I have.
Good. So before we go on to the man-woman relationship that you describe in your books and articles, let's start with college years. Now, a lot of people to get to corporate land, they need to go to college first.
Right.
Now, when I was 20, when I was finishing college, college was still a serious matter. It seems to me today that unless you want to be a lawyer or a doctor, a medical doctor, especially for these crazy studies like woman, gay, whatever studies.
Yeah, navel gazing studies.
Yeah, most of college is just a very expensive way to waste your time.
Very good.
Is
Yeah,
it so?
That was my experience. I went 10 years ago, but it's still like that now. Most of the degrees people are getting are just completely worthless. If you're not going for STEM, so like anything that you're going to get a job right out of school, you're just going to party. And what's happening is we have a big student loan debt crisis looming. And it's just because all these kids are going to get, tap dance therapy or puppetry masters and stuff like that. And they're coming out, they're like, where's the jobs? Where's the jobs? And then they come and, go be baristas and they can't pay off their student loans. and they want, the government to bail them out. But shocker, student loans are non-forgivable in bankruptcy, and that's the scary thing. So, yeah, it's just almost a complete waste of time, and you don't learn anything there. And when I was there, I was talking to one of the professors, and he said, university today is so watered down. Like, the kids that are coming out of high school can barely formulate a complete sentence. And he's like, we have to dumb it down in order to get these kids through. And it's just creating like a backlog of just bullshit and stupidity. And you're getting all these kids out into the workforce, and they can't even show up to work today. And if they can't show up, or if they do, they show up late, leave early. I've written about this in corporate land from what I've experienced. And it's like, what's going to happen in the next 10, 20 years when you have these generations running things? What's it going to look like? We're going to have bridges falling over and just roads crumbling. Like, but yeah.
Yeah, that's one additional catastrophe scenario that I didn't write in my books, but it's definitely one that I'm discovering. Now, one other danger of college is that this is the first time when young men and young women are becoming dangerous to each other, right?
Yeah. So are we talking about sexual encounters, or?
Well, that, and also the politically correct and all this crazy stuff that already started. I remember that starting in the early 90s, that there were some weird, especially in the US when I was there, the way women and men were, how the relationships were engineered by the social times, by the what is considered politically correct, became into what is today an insanity. I mean, if you can be blamed for rape, even if you didn't. The men are having a tough time, young men especially, right? Exactly.
You can't even bring up like a conversation anymore in lecture classes, because if you say something that it's mostly factual, like if you just point out reality now, a reality has become offensive, even if it's true. And what's the point of even going to a lecture? And it's supposed to be a place where ideas are discussed, even if they're hard ideas, tough ideas. You can't even get a conversation going, because one side will call you, a sexist, misogynist, and then it ends there, right? They just use the magic words, right? Sexist. Oh, conversation done. And as far as sexual encounters go, what we're seeing today in society is what's called a CAD society. So in the days of old, when men weren't replaced by a government check, when there wasn't a safety net there, women had to make that decision early on in their life. I'm going to need to settle down at some point. So what we have today is a lot of women riding what's called the cock carousel. I'm sure you've heard of it, because they can. When you have a safety net and abundance of resources, it's like when you have like 10 cases of beer at home. You're going to probably drink more throughout the day. So it's like, I got 5 more cases. But when you have like 3 beers left, you're going to sit down and be like, oh, I shouldn't drink 3 beers today because I'm not going to have any for the, day 2, day 3. It's the same thing. When you have a safety net, that's human nature. And what feminism has done is it's amplified female nature. So everyone thinks, well, women have just turned like this. They've become these creatures with wide sexual palettes. Like, no, it's always been there. Mm-hmm. It's just been turned up with social media amplified to the extreme. And so we're seeing what's called the 80-20 rule, where pretty much all the women are going for the 20% of the guys. Yeah. Your Chads, your Tyrones, those guys, right? And then the rest of the, like, if you want to do a sliding scale, like the 5s and below, they're getting frustrated, right? And you're seeing these symptoms pop up where you got these guys going on, mass shootings and running, like just the other month, running people down in Toronto. I believe he was what they call incels, right? Mm-hmm. The frustrated males who aren't getting enough sexual companionship, and this is what happens. This is how wars actually start, is when the male populace is so frustrated because they can't get access and fulfill their biological needs, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is what we call hypergamy, right?
Right. Yeah.
How does it work? So when women are young, they have very high sexual market value, while men, of course, of the same age, still are unproven because they haven't shown their potential, and so they are indeed frustrated. However, when men get older, if they are on the top 20%, if they succeed, which is my case, I'm fortunate in that. Then they have access to countless young women, and there is no incentive for men to settle down. So we have also men who seem to become perpetual teenagers because they can just have fun and never take responsibility. Now, do you see that strongly, and you depict this in your characters? And actually, what I really want to ask you the question is, what are men supposed to do in this mess?
That is actually a good point, and I'm glad you brought that up because I haven't thought about that side where both genders are to blame for what's going on. So, yes, when you're young as a man, you're basically trading with wood chips, and the women are trading with gold.
Yeah. So
at 18, typical female is pretty much front-loaded her life if she's really beautiful. 18 till about, let's say 30, it's technically a little bit younger than that when the wall hits. But what's happening is we're running out of quote-unquote good men. And when women refer to it as good men, they mean, your Christian Greys, your multi-billionaires, the guys who make six figures and whatnot. So now when guys become successful, which is usually around, let's say 30 to 44, which is their highest earnings potential. They've done studies. Usually when you hit that age bracket, that's when you're making the most money. You have the most status. And so when guys are getting to that level, they want access to the young girls. They don't want the 30 and above. And it's just biology. And so now they're trading with gold. And the women who are 30 and above are starting to see devaluation in their currency. And so it becomes a big problem. Now, how it used to be was your grandma, if you're a woman, would have told you, you better settle down in your 20s and 30s. Even though grandma didn't understand hypergamy, she subconsciously did. So I think a lot of what we talk about, I don't really think women understand the technical aspects. We're really good at explaining it this way, but I think they subconsciously know. And guys especially, there's nothing wrong with you when you're in high school because it happens to all guys. You're not going to beat the guys who are 30 and successful. And you see it today, and especially where I used to work, all the young females, young interns, they're going for the older guys. And when you were interning as a young guy at any job, you'd always see the cashiers go for the older guys at work. You're like, what's going on, guys? What's happening? It's there's nothing wrong with you. You just got to wait. But it's not you can just think, I'll just wait till 30, do nothing, and then I'll just get all the pussy I want, right? No, you actually have to go to the gym. You have to, earn a living, either get a good job or do something that's going to make you interesting. Go explore the world, have stories. It doesn't have to be money. It just has to be some sort of value that women crave. And women crave interesting. They crave men that have the ability to navigate the world on their own and that you can bring them with them. And they love that sort of thing, right? But that's my take on the sort of disconnect we're having and how feminism has kind of pulled the strings a bit and have shifted things.
What would you advise, and certainly what would the readers of your book take as advice from you and your characters of your books on how to deal with women? That's
a good question. what a lot of people call as being aloof, you know how we hear that term? What I see today is men still objectifying women. And you're like, oh, there's that word again. What you want to do is subjectify women. So if we're going to go this way where we're commodifying love and dating, you have to become the product. And women do it already. Why should you objectify a woman when she does it every day in the mirror? She's already objectifying herself.
Mm-hmm.
She's putting on the lipstick, putting on those yoga pants, She's all dolled up for Chad. So you got to become Chad. That's it. You have to sell yourself. And you have to understand what women value, and what you value in women is not going to be the same what they value in you. So you kind of have to treat it as what it is, a value exchange. So what's your product like? If women are turning you down, what's wrong with your product? Are you not hitting the gym? Or you not have interesting hobbies? Stuff like that. That's what they look for, right?
So what we are turning the market for relationships is an open, liberal, in the sense of economic liberal marketplace. And indeed, you mentioned the Pareto rule of the 80-20. And I don't know if you're ever familiar, and if you don't, I think you can find it translated in English. There's one of the best French authors of the last 50 years, Michel Houellebecq, has written a book on this probably 20 years ago, explaining that when, in the old days, and certainly in traditional societies even today, you don't have a marketplace for relationships, because basically families were arranging marriages between their kids, and you stayed in the same class. You had basically something that was arranged, and you didn't have a lot of choice, except maybe hidden here and there, and of course you had prostitutes. In today's, which is a very cheap way to have sex, by the way, much cheaper than marriage. Any divorced man would tell you that paying for sex is much cheaper than free one. Anyway, and however, with the marketplace of relationships, you have that Pareto rule, you have that hypergamy, where young women can have all the men they want, and they will focus on the top ones. But the top ones will never settle, because they have a constant flow of more and more and many, and the kinkiest and the sickest and the most fun, and why settle? So especially when, and I will then leave it to you. I'm sorry if I do this monologue, but
that's great, yeah.
There's two other effects. On one side, the state basically tell everyone, look, it doesn't matter, I'll give you money. And if you're a single woman, even if you have kids, I'll give you money. So no responsibility, no one gives a fuck. And the second aspect is that advertising tell women who are on the decreasing market, sexual market value, they are telling them that, oh no, you're still sexy, you can still have fun. Look at Sex in the City, all these TV shows. You can still have fun until you're 50 or maybe 60. Doesn't matter. You're still beautiful. You're beautiful. So they kind of brainwash women to not think that they, after 25, you should settle down, because your value is decreasing very fast. And this combination makes it, I think, even harder for women in the long run than for men. And certainly it makes a childless society.
Yeah, like you can say it is bad for society. It's almost great for guys, because we now have an open window. You can see female nature for what it is. But at the same time, with the whole single mother issue, and I'm looking out the window right now, and I'm thinking about my city, and it's a huge problem here. But yes, back then, it's huge social stigma, huge shame. Now today, no shame. You take those restraints off, and you see nature for what it is. And yeah, you can't blame women for hypergamy, because it's an instinct. It's not like they choose to do it. Most, if not all, women want the full package. They want commitment from the alpha, but they're not going to get it. And that's when you need to use your head and be like, if I'm not going to get commitment from Chad or Tyrone, I'm going to have to settle. But what we're seeing is they're getting the kids from Chad and Tyrone and then settling with, Beta Bucks Poindexter, right, who has to pick up the credit card bill and, all the other stuff that comes with childbearing and all the responsibilities. So, what was your other point?
Well,
there was something towards the end.
The other point is that the advertising makes it makes believe the woman that they can be hot forever.
Oh yeah. Yeah, there was a recent movie that came out, and I forget, it's not Reese Witherspoon, but she's like in a house full of like these young guys, and like she sleeps with all of them. I forget why she's there, if she's like house sitting or something, but there's like films like that, and I talked to you a little about the phenomenon we're seeing with female teachers, and I write about it on my blog. It's kind of funny, like I satirize it, but I'm trying to bring that issue to the forefront because I think it's hidden a lot in society. But there's a huge trend right now of female teachers, young and old, sleeping with like 16-year-olds.
Yeah.
And we like to make like, oh, good for him. And you know what?
I wish it happened to me when I was 16.
Oh, no way. Well, I have stories about, I won't get into them because like,
technically it's a kind of a rape technically, but
I'll just say this because I'm writing a book currently on it, but I'll just say this: it's bad from the aspect of, especially in the States, if the 16-year-old, let's just say, happens to knock up that teacher and she has the child, once he turns 18, he is now on the hook. So he'll have to pay for the kid if she makes him. So that's the only problem.
Okay.
But back to the point of the media is you have films like, Bad Teacher, and it glorifies it. You got countless books out there. Like if you go through like the erotica section on Amazon, you should see all the frickin' books about teachers sleeping with their students and like all these movies. And it just, like you said, it encourages. It's like, oh yeah, it's okay to be a cougar and to be a social predator, pretty much. But like, we don't give women.
Let me put a caveat: is that when the teacher is a woman and the student is a 16-year-old man, young man. Yeah. Well, we all would say, hey, which 16-year-old boy hasn't fantasized over the hot teacher he had at high school? Now, If you revert that and you have a 30-year-old man teacher having sex with a 16-year-old girl in the classroom, then suddenly it's not at all the same deal at all.
It's a game changer.
Then it's a rape. It's abuse of power.
He's gone. You'll never see him again. He's in a black hole somewhere.
Yeah.
But it's if we want to hold men and women up to the same standards, if we're going to have a quote unquote equal society, then it's the exact same thing. And I'll say this too: what we determine what puberty is, society goes off of the model of when a boy, when a girl enters puberty. So
12.
No, it's when a guy enters puberty. So what's that, like 13, 14?
Yeah, 13.
He stops at 18?
Depends of the race, of course. Let's say people from the tropical areas get puberty earlier, and people from the north areas, genetically, they get it from later, much later.
But, so girls enter puberty earlier, they mature faster.
Yeah.
So these guys who are like 14, 15, 16, they've only just almost started. They're a little bit behind the women. Like, the girls are going like 11, 12, finishing at 16. Guys are just starting like 13-ish, finishing at 18. So really, as a female teacher, you're like really taking advantage because they don't know what's going on. They don't know what's going on.
No, of course.
Yeah, what's up? Yeah.
I wasn't implying that it's a good thing that adults sleep with underage people, even if the adult is a woman and the underage is a boy. I was just saying that in the fantasy of most 16 to 17-year-old boys, the hot 30-year-old teacher, provided you have a hot teacher, and if it's not a fat land whale, but let's assume it's a hot hot teacher. Well, it's a fantasy. It doesn't mean that it should be legal. Let's be very clear.
I understood what you were saying.
Okay.
And actually bring up another good point. The reason why I started writing the book that I'm doing is I kept going back to the comment sections on a lot of these news articles, and the top comment and the most common comment was, where were these teachers when I was young? So I'm going to ask you, it was all pretty much old ladies, right? And actually there was more male teachers when I was in grade school, and now you don't see any male teachers.
No.
But now you got like these very hot, like they got the freaking nose ring in, they got the lower back tattoo. Like if you go on my blog, you can see like all these young hot teachers, and they all have prolific social media presences. Like the one I recently did, her name's Elizabeth Flint. I got her pretty much all her Instagram photos because she left them up like 48 hours after she was charged, which is way too long. But you can see the difference of what's happening in the workplace, because in the old days, you had a family first if you're a woman, and then you had your career. Now these girls are coming right out of college, and they're all like the modern millennial where they have the social media. It's now easier to contact your students, and it's easier for other people to find out. Like I'm sure a lot of these situations, like it just travels around people's phones. Like, oh, I banged Mrs. So-and-so, and then boom, blows up, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. So when your character in Uncle Nick seems to be someone who doesn't care about social norms, political correctness, he just takes advantage of life.
Yeah.
Now, how is that character part of you, or how is that fiction?
He is fiction, but I would say he is a persona, a comedic persona I made up. And it was part of my way in dealing with the world we were living in. So it started out as almost like writing a diary, because it is his diary, but then it morphed into like, I'm gonna turn this into a book, and I want it to be a character that people can look up to, even if you hate him. Because at the end of the book, even if you don't like the content, you kind of love to hate the persona, because it's something that we definitely need in today's society, because under my belief is it doesn't matter what you say now, because you're going to be called a bigot, a sexist, a misogynist, so you might as well just hang your balls out there. Honestly, we're at that point where just go for it. Tell it like it is. And if people want to listen, they'll listen. And if they don't, that's fine. Because that's not my problem. That's not your problem. If you don't want to understand what's going on, then you can put the blinders on and you'll pay the price, literally.
Okay, so you live in Trudeau's Canada. And your country
very odd place for me to be in.
Your country is leading the world for equality between men, women, animals, transgender, whatever long lists they make. Okay. At the same time, you're leading you're in the leading pack of countries who are importing people from traditional countries I know very well, where relationship between men and women are not equal, first of all, but also are still extremely traditional, for good or bad. Let's not even go into judgment here, but certainly cultures where, women don't go playing around, otherwise they get killed or thrown acid on the face and things like that. So there is this paradox where we are bringing in people who are incredibly traditional and violent, and at the same time, our behaviors are becoming more and more loose, more and more, they're striding away from basic anthropology. So how is this clash going to play out in your opinion? And this is not just Canada, of course. It's the US, it's in Europe, it's in most of the Western Hemisphere. How do you see this playing out?
Canada is a great example, and I'm surprised we haven't seen more symptoms pop up because we started seeing them in the UK. If I remember, like all the violence that's happening,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think it ends well here. We have certain parts of Canada are still, I would say, traditional, and that's more to the western side, like your Alberta, your Saskatchewan. We can go into the economy a little bit later if you want to talk about how we can't even get a basic pipeline done in this country, but that's for another topic. But I don't see it ending well, and I'm surprised I haven't seen any further social class clashes where I am, because we, especially in my city, we have a huge influx with the college here of immigrants from India, the Middle East, over the past 5 years. And my city, I would say, is more on the lunchbox traditional type of side, where it was always a factory-driven city. It's called Chemical Valley. And very traditional, very conservative, very this is how it is. We're not going to think outside the box. And I'm surprised, I'm sure once we reach a point where the immigrant population starts to overshadow, then we'll probably start seeing some of that type of stuff. But on the other hand, when I think about it, we're so tolerant that it might not even be a problem. You know what I mean? We might just bend over completely and just, let the other culture take over. That's the other scenario I'm thinking of. I think it doesn't end badly now.
It ends badly then for women who have to wear camping tents over their heads.
Oh yeah, that's actually a good point. So Western women today, especially in Canada, they do their protests and they gripe, they wear their pink pussy hats. But I always think you're the most privileged and comfortable of your gender in history, and then you're talking about patriarchy and losing your rights. Well, eventually, if the welfare state collapses, which it will in Canada, we can't sustain this. We're already at 170% household debt. That's not to mention student loans and the welfare state. But once it falls apart, and once your country is pretty much taken over by another culture, you're going to lose your rights one or two ways. And that might not shock your audience, but anyone else who's listening who hasn't thought about this stuff, that's the harsh truth, is you'll lose your rights either way, and that's how it ends badly for women.
Yeah, for sure.
Because the men in this country, I don't think will stand for anything, quite frankly. So the other part. So if the women are looking for the native men to do something about it, yeah, forget it. It's not going to happen.
Okay, so on men, there is a lot of movements of men who feel, whether they're alpha or not alpha, I can see many men moving towards some sort of traditional values, whether it's the men going their own way, or or perhaps more with better relevance, the manosphere. And authors like my friend Jack Donovan, who writes about the way of man and what men together build in terms of society and values. So, of course, that kind of approach is very different from Uncle Nick. But so it's less hedonistic and more recreating the hardships and the values that makes a society strong. How do you see people moving from one to the other, or what do you think is the proportion?
Yeah, because Uncle Nick, he's very nihilistic, right?
Yeah.
But he also has a heart, but he comes from the perspective of if it's going to collapse, it's going to collapse, not my deal. I'm just going to enjoy the decline type of deal. But the only way we can move into rebuilding, would you agree, has to collapse first? How can we do the transition?
There is no transition.
It's very tough.
Yeah.
because to convince people today otherwise, it takes a kick in the ass. What I think.
Yeah. Well, if you read my books, you will see that there is no way we're not going to collapse hard, very hard, and then maybe we rebuild if we survive. But but it's going to be very hard. And but anyway, I'll let you read my book when you have some time and when you're in a good mood.
I'm gonna order it. Yeah, it's the. I actually want to order the one you wrote for women. Is How Women Can Survive. I actually want to pick that one up.
You will like this one because it gives you the perspective of women who are out of this hypergamy game, and basically they say, well, the way this is going, if things collapse, women discover that without the protection of the state and the law, they're game. But not game in like in a bar. They're game like in Syria, where they get enslaved and raped and maybe sold on the slave market. And that's if they're not killed. And therefore, they better think hard of what this paternalistic, masculine, toxic society is giving them today, because they never had it as good. And hey, who am I to judge? I'm taking advantage of that as well. But if things collapse, and they will collapse, this is medieval again. And at least in my opinion, and people can make their own opinions and think by themselves on the consequences. But I've interviewed a lot of women who believe that. And this is, half the book is about what is the condition of women today and the status of feminism. And the second part of the book is an interview about 25 women who explain in depth what they think the future is going to be like and how they prepare themselves. And they're not all traditional. I've interviewed, there is even a couple of lesbian women, so homosexual, and there are single women, they are married, they are with children. There's all sorts of options and ways of life. So it's a very wide spectrum of even if it's 25 women that tell their story, it's pretty wild. And one of them is even a hypersexual woman. So it's quite interesting, swinger lifestyle and things like that. So you have all sorts of but they all concur to say, well, today's freedoms may not last very long if the system collapses. And it will collapse, as you said. One of the reasons is obviously the financial unsustainability of it. But there's other reasons as well. And certainly women, because they're physically weaker, despite what feminists think, they don't run and fight as hard and as fast and as good as men, because that's the way the physics is. And indeed, in the Middle East, you don't see a lot of women doing slut walks in Saudi Arabia.
No.
Because that walk is going to be a very short one if they try.
Yeah. I'll say, for all the gripe about toxic masculinity, in the end, when the system collapses, you're going to need bad men to protect you from the real bad men.
Yeah.
You're going to need men at the end of the day. Because there's always going to be bad men.
And this is by the way why women actually like bad boys, because they know that the beta male or the gamma male, like the soy boy, is not going to protect them from the real bad man. So you need the alpha.
Maybe the soy boy can throw his salmon-colored jeans at the bad men. Maybe
actually, the joke goes that if women can run faster than the soy boy, maybe the real bad man will rape the soy boy first. Because in some countries they rape both men and women. But anyway, to go back on your books, you describe I skimmed through it, and once again I just received the book 2 days ago, so I haven't read them, but I will. And it seems that you describe from the characters all the the dating mechanisms, the life in the bars and the living in the fast lane, and what men need to do to attract the hot woman, and what give you these ideas? Is it observation? And in fact, your articles on your blog are quite insightful into that. Perhaps you can tell us a bit more
about on how to attract women.
Yeah, maybe on how you study that, how you came to these ideas. What's your research like?
A lot of it is observation, and it's mainly seeing family and friends just taken through the ringer, and then also when they come to you and they ask you why this is happening, and just looking around the environment today, it's all observation. Like all the stuff I write about corporate land was just observation, and that's where I really get my research from, is just watching people. Most people today, like, there's nothing wrong with technology. Like, we wouldn't be able to do this without the magic of Skype and all that stuff, but a lot of people have their heads in their phones, and if you just look up 10 minutes, you can start thinking for yourself, and it's almost like people distrust thinking for themselves anymore, but I find it relaxing and analyzing. But yeah, a lot of it's taken from dating multiple women. A lot of it's taken from some of the relationships I've had, and actually doing the hard thing is being honest with yourself. What we all do, and it's natural, is blame the other person, but sometimes the common denominator in every situation is you. Why did this relationship fail? Oh, it's because I did this again. I acted beta, quote unquote, or I changed my attitude. And it's like, well, why did I stop doing the things that attracted her in the first place? What did that, And it's a lot of it's a shit test. So women will try to test for quote unquote alphaness all the time, and if you start failing those tests, then they lose interest, right? So
okay, interesting. I must say for the audience who's listening that actually soy is actually good for you. It's just a joke when we say soy boys, but
yeah.
People get the joke. But actually, it's pretty good to eat. Anyway, then I'll have all the vegans trying to ban us from the internet forever.
Yeah.
No, I like you guys, no problem, and especially if you don't run fast. Okay, so the interesting aspect of all this is that in the last 50 years, everything about men and women relationships in society, in the corporate world as well as outside, seems to have changed. And especially in the cities, I presume that in the countryside, in the small towns, you still have a little bit more traditional, even if they have Tinder as well. So I'm not sure. But certainly, how do you see this evolving in the near future? Let's assume we don't collapse. Let's assume the economy keeps going. How do you see men-women relationship going? Even more hypergamy, or
in general?
Yeah, in general.
I honestly think it's going to turn into something like an Amazon type of world where you just order each other. It's almost like what Tinder's doing, where if you want to fuck someone, you just order it. And like we're seeing with like cam girls and stuff like that, like men just giving their money for attention. I think we're going to see a lot more of that. We're going to see a lot more businesses pop up, especially for women too, where they want to get the guy with the ultimate package. And we're starting to see that with a business called Rent-A-Gent, where a woman for a day can rent a guy who has many talents. Like he can play piano for them. He can come over and do some handiwork and stuff like that. So men,
a husband. Basically, it's a husband.
It's a husband or a cool boyfriend that she can bring to her work functions and stuff like that, because she doesn't have time to go out and find, Christian Grey, because chances are he's not out there. And if she does, it's going to be a waste of her time. So why not order yourself a Christian Grey? And these guys are going to get paid to work out and to be interesting, to learn skills. And it's just like what guys do with prostitutes and hopefully if they have some success on Tinder, is you want a girl for sexual company. Men trade their resources for sex. Women trade their sex for resources. It's always going to be like that. It's just going to be in a different context, in a more technological context in the future.
Well, I'm not sure it's very long lasting.
Yeah. Maybe we'll probably not even get to that point.
No, for sure. One of the things that readers usually say to me is when I write about economic collapse, usually they say to me, well, look, the economy is the only thing that has not collapsed yet. And indeed, the reason, and again, I'm not a moralist, but the reason this is happening is because there is no shared strong values within society and nothing that enforces them. And maybe it's a repeat question from before, but do you see any way that values, whatever they are, but strong values can come back? And if so, how?
I'd honestly say if we enter into some sort of war scenario where family is the last thing and only thing you have. Because, like I said before, society needs a huge kick in the butt because we're way too comfortable. And that's what happens when you get comfortable is you start not cherishing, you start not valuing what was valued before. You expand your horizons more and you forget what actually is really important. And society has become more or less hedonistic. That's the problem. Once you go hedonist, you don't come back from it because it's always the next dopamine rush. And that's what's happening is it's just pleasure seeking everywhere. You get that dopamine rush when you're on your phone, when you're checking Tinder and you're getting your messages and everything. Everything's instant.
Yeah.
And when people come home today, it's almost like family and all that stuff is boring. It's not exciting.
No,
so
I agree.
The mundane things will become exciting when there's nothing left. Believe me.
No, I think it's a smart answer. And if you want a historic perspective, when I studied before the nanny state and actually before the 19th century, especially in the large cities like London or Dublin or Naples or Algiers, I have the data for these cities. 40 to 50% of the women population were prostitutes. Half. Basically, half the women in the big cities they had to prostitute because life was so tough. There was no state. The economy was like a war economy and like a collapsed economy. There was no one to help. And if you weren't able to find a good husband who takes care of you, and therefore who you take care, then what? Then you get a child out of wedlock, and then your life is fucked, and you have to prostitute yourself to survive. And this is obviously as a husband, as a father, as a son. We don't really want this kind of society when you think about it.
No.
And indeed, I understand very well the idea of we see the advantages of this hypergamy society, especially if you're on the upper side of it, on the good side of it as a man.
It's addictive, right?
It is
That's
addictive.
What I was trying to get at. Yeah.
Especially in the multicultural city like in Toronto or Vancouver or New York or all the big cities. Because you can basically get out and say, hey, tonight I'll have an Asian girl, and tomorrow, hey, I'll try a blonde, and tomorrow, hey, I have a black one, and the next day, hey, I'll try some Middle Eastern one.
It's the candy store, right?
Exactly, and if you can afford it, it's very easy. If you have a little bit of money, if you work out, if you have self-confidence, it's very easy. And for every 100 women that you get, you have 80 guys who have 0.
Yeah. And if you're a guy, if you put in the time and the effort, it's extremely easy because majority of the guys, they're not working out. They're not doing anything to progress their life. So if you just become a little bit, if you want to use the term Chad, you can Chad light, instead of Coors Light. If you just become Chad light, you'll still get a lot of women. So yeah, it's terribly easy.
Yeah, here's perhaps my second to last question is that in the way anthropology works usually, men hunt for women and literally hunt, try to, to show that they're great and show that they have resources and show that they promise a lot of things.
Right.
And usually it's women who choose. And I think this is what's happening today. But usually the way women would choose, because they had kids and they knew they had to, they needed resources for 2 or 3 or 4 years, at least, minimum, while they were having kids, they used to choose, and actually biology shows that when women are ovulating, they tend to try to get the alpha, and when they're not ovulating, which is most of the time, they're trying to get someone who's more stable. They're more attracted to more stable guys. But usually they try to choose someone who's dependable. And I wonder if women don't, and it seems to me that they realize this a bit later, when they are 35, when the biological clock gets very loud, ticking very loud in their mind.
Too late,
And it's probably too late, because after 35, after 40, it becomes harder. Not impossible, but harder to have children. And are harder to find a good guy, because again, the good guy can have younger women. So we are in this catch-22 situation where in the end, no one is happy.
Yeah, no one wins. It's a no-win scenario in the
Except
end.
Except the top guys and the top women, of course.
Yeah.
But that's 2 or 3 or 5% of the people.
Yeah, and that's why you see everyone, well, mainly everyone with long faces today, go out to the supermarket. Look at the guy like pushing the stroller, and look at the wife. Like, majority of the faces I see are just long and sad faces, because it's like you can tell she either settled and still wants to ride the cock carousel, but she's unhappy about it, and the guy is sad because holy crap, my wife's giving me a hand job maybe every birthday, an HBO under the cover special. And, he's not satisfied because, maybe they're separated too. Who knows their story, but you see it everywhere.
Yeah. Last question then is, what's your advice to most of your readers are probably young men, and most of my audience is, it's probably young as well.
Okay.
What's your advice to young men to be happy?
To be happy, I would say, in your life backpack, don't put rocks in it. Put only the things you need. Rocks meaning don't get into debt. Don't have kids you can't afford. I'm not saying don't have kids. Don't have kids you can't afford. That is the majority of the problems I see today. Have your life set up like a Sherman tank, not a Tiger tank. A Tiger tank meaning it was a great tank. A lot of moving parts, and if something broke down, oh boy, that thing sat on the field and it was useless. Mm-hmm. And then the T-34 Russian tank comes along, leaner, meaner, faster, didn't have all the breakdowns. And yeah, the Tiger tank could take out like 4 of them, but like you send a bunch of T-34s, bye-bye Tiger. So don't have a lot of moving parts in your life. Keep it simple, work out, stay healthy, eat right. I love my beer, but I should probably, knock it a bit off, but like keep the beer to a minimum, have fun, but mainly realize that most guys, the problem they get into is by age 40, they don't have a body or a meat sack worth living in anymore. So you want to stay in shape and you want to have the best life possible. And the way to do that is to stay healthy. Financially, start investing as young as you can, when you can open a bank account. And it doesn't have to be a huge bunch of money every month. If you can only afford to put like $100 towards an investment, start doing that, because you want dividends, you want passive income. For the longest time, it was hard for me to realize that your time equals your money. That's not how you build wealth. You need to have some sort of passive income coming in, whether it's through stocks that have dividends or a side business where you get royalties and whatnot. So realize that your time is your commodity, and it's very precious as a man. Don't waste it.
Okay. Well, Frank Cervi, thank you very much. So let me remind you that you're author of Corporate Land, Uncle Nick, Burning the Midnight. I'll put the link to your website here and to your blog. And I encourage our viewers to check it out and read your books.
Very good. Thanks for having me today.
Thank you very much.
A great discussion.
Take care.